So, which mob is the best mob to vote for during 2022's Minecon Live mob vote? How does each mob function? How might each one of the mobs actually affect the gameplay of Minecraft? If you've had any of these questions, then this is the video for you. Recently, Minecraft announced the Minecon Live 2022 mob vote, and this year, the three mobs that we can choose between are the Sniffer, the Rascal, and the Tough Golem. So today I'm going to be explaining to you the game mechanics and speculate about the possible features of each mob if they actually got added to the game, and of course, which mob you should actually vote for. Alright, mob number 1, the Sniffer. Okay, wait, no, not that. There we go. The Sniffer. Sniffers are large dinosaur-like mobs, said to be from an ancient time by the developers. Minecraft Jurassic Age confirmed? They hatch out of eggs found underwater, and their main purpose seems to be to sniff various foliage and find seeds. It seems that some of the seeds the Sniffer will find will be brand new plants, exclusive to the Sniffer, which is definitely a huge plus of this mob, because Minecraft has been in need of some new plants or crops for quite some time now. So how would this guy actually impact the world of Minecraft if he did in fact get added? Well, the ability to sniff out seeds sounds really cool on paper. If it's actually implemented into the game, it may be kinda useless. Even if its ability to find seeds means you could get your hands on rarer seeds like cocoa beans, melon, and pumpkin or beetroot seeds earlier in the game, a quick stop to a village should have what you need most of the time, and may even be less of a hassle than going out and searching for some underwater eggs to hatch a mob to get it to do it for you. And well, yes, the prospect of having a few new plants does seem nice. Most crops and foliage in the game is just a lot of the same. So unless they can come up with some unique features for these plants, it just doesn't really seem worth it to me. On the plus side, the design for this mob is very visually appealing. It kind of reminds me of a Pokemon a little bit. And a mob that starts its life as an egg in the water, then moves onto land when it hatches is definitely something that we haven't really seen before, and continues Minecraft's recent pattern of amphibious mobs, just behind the frog that they added last update. Which absolutely sucks, by the way. I made a whole video on it, you can go watch it, links in the iCard. Alrighty, next up is the Rascal. The Rascal is this small goblin-like mob that spawns in abandoned mine shafts below Y0, and hides from the player. If you find him 3 times, he will present you with a random piece of loot. The example being shown here is an enchanted iron pickaxe. Its body seems to be covered in some sort of moss or green cloak, and it carries a backpack around with it that contains loot. Now, the Rascal is a very well-designed mob from a gameplay perspective. Having a mob that can fetch you loot if you beat this little minigame is definitely a very fun concept, and could be useful, as having a way to get your hands on more tools easily this deep underground could add an aspect of anticipation and excitement to the game, especially when you're in these mine shafts. And speaking of mine shafts, apart from some tiny changes made to them in 1.18, mine shafts have relatively stayed the same thing, only having one exclusive mob, which just so happens to be the worst mob ever! And adding a new creature to make things a little more interesting would definitely make mine shafts a bit more enjoyable. Now, depending on whether this mob is executed right or not, it could be somewhat ineffective. First of all, the loot that this thing gives you better be good. Mojang has shown a pattern recently of promising great loot for certain areas of the game and then just delivering the most useless items that you can find literally anywhere. So this thing better pull up with some decent gear. Perhaps to balance that out, it would spawn pretty rarely. Maybe it could even come with some unique loot of its own, like the Sniffer. Another potential issue is the fact that a lot of players might never interact with this feature, as mine shafts are pretty rare, and the mob actively hides from the player, making it a mob that doesn't have all that much of an actual impact on the game, as well as the design. We have to talk about the design. From a purely visual standpoint, this mob isn't the most appealing. The face is definitely more ugly than cute, and overall the art style doesn't really fit in with that of Minecraft's. Okay, third and final mob, the Tough Golem. The Tough Golem is another buildable mob which has the main game mechanic of the ability to pick up an item and transport it to another location. I can see this mob having all sorts of uses in game, like possible item sorting systems where if you get enough of them going, you can transport items back to your base while you go and do something else. This mob, also like last year's Golem, seems to have endless possibilities for late game automation. And also like last year's Golem, this mob would be the first new Golem added in over a decade. The last ones being the Snow and Iron Golems, added all the way back in 1.4. It would also provide an additional use for the Tough block, which outside of the Amethyst Geodes is a pretty useless block. However, the Golem's one core gameplay mechanic may end up being a bit of a bust. The video is pretty vague on how the item display and transportation feature actually works, and if these little guys are unable to interact with chest type blocks or actually even be directed in where they are to go. If they aren't, then they are essentially rendered useless, basically becoming an item frame with legs. The one thing I will say about this mob is that it does a pretty good job of balancing its gameplay gimmick with an appealing visual design. Both aspects of it are relatively well-rounded and unique. Okay, so then that leaves us with the question. Which mob is best, based on the information we actually have? Which mob should you actually be voting for? I will try my best to answer that question. But first, I made a Discord server. Please join it. It's so easy, bro. Just hop on that link in the description and we can all have like a server to discuss the random assortment of games I talk about. So please join or I'll be forced to keep plugging it. And oh, I'll get real annoying about it too. So for the good of both of us, just hop on the Discord, please. Now, the issue with this year's group of mobs is when actually trying to say that one is better than the other, they're all just kinda mid. In years past, it was often a pretty clear-cut and dry case of one mob by far outshining the others in terms of gameplay and visual appeal. But this year they're all pretty even. The Sniffer excels in visual design appeal but lacks a useful gameplay gimmick. The Rascal's dorky art style clashes with the visual aesthetic of Minecraft but provides a very useful gameplay mechanic and has the potential to shake up the bland gameplay of the Mineshaft quite a bit. And the Tough Golem is just kinda mid in both its gimmick and its visual design, making the choice pretty difficult for most players. So what do most Minecraft players think right now? Well, the overwhelming consensus of the player base seems to be to vote for the Sniffer, which, to be granted, is mostly because we all know that the Minecraft fanbase is mostly brainlet 9-year-olds who will just vote for any mob with a memorable design. Me see bright color, me vote, cute mob wins. But in this case, I actually think the community may be onto something here. Yeah, that's right. I'm not going to be the contrarian for once. When looking at these three choices, I think the Sniffer does inch out its competitors by a little bit. Its visual appeal does in fact beat out the competition by a long shot, and while its main gimmick isn't the most useful, it's definitely more accessible to casual players of the game, as instead of spawning in a rare structure or having a feature that's only super useful to late game players, it spawns pretty much everywhere where there's water, and has the potential to significantly improve the game with the addition of new plants, which is something that Minecraft really needs right now considering how barren and lacking the forests Minecraft currently are. So yeah, vote Sniffer. Or don't, he's pretty much guaranteed to win anyway, and I doubt the 100 odd people who watch this video will make much of a difference. Alright, I'm gonna keep this nice and simple. Join the Discord server. Do it, right now. Please, I'm begging you. Also vote Sniffer, I guess. But most importantly, you know, go down there, like, subscribe, comment, do all that stuff I pretend not to care about, and goodbye. I will see you in the next video, which it might be a really long one, so it might be a while. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to disappear again. I know.